In this video, we will talk about very well-known topics like hyper and hyposensitivity. But what I want to underline for you is that it is not the main problem in sensory perception and autism, because hypersensitivities and sensory intolerance are consequences of much more important sensory phenomena. And this we discussed in our previous videos, like Gestalt perception, leading to fragmented perception when they cannot filter out irrelevant stimuli and start processing bit by bit by bit, to distorted perception, delayed processing, and it brings overload eventually. And the overload causes hypersensitivity and sensory intolerance. And what is more, we have to remember that it is not specific to autism. Actually, it is transdiagnostic, and sensory hypersensitivities are present in many other conditions, disorders, whatever word you prefer, and even in the general population. So it's not enough to have hypersensitivity as a symptom of autism, because uh, it is for everyone. All people are sensitive to certain stimuli, but in what degree and intensity. And we have to remember that different people have hypersensitivities in different sensory modality. For someone, actually for many autistic people, it is visual hypersensitivities. Bright lights, especially fluorescent lights, they are killers. To be honest, many cannot tolerate fluorescent lights. And the reactions are different in different people. For example, for some, they become agitated. They lose the ability to understand what is going on. For others, they can fall asleep under fluorescent lights. But what we can do, I will tell you a bit later. For others, it is auditory hypersensitivities. It's about sounds they cannot tolerate. And what is interesting, it's not necessarily about loud sounds. With loud sounds, it is easier, right? Because we can provide them, for example, something like this. I use it all the time when I don't like the sounds around me. But sometimes it is the sounds we cannot hear. But for them, these inaudible sounds are very, very loud. I'll give you just one example. We live in a house where we can regulate the temperature, right? This thermostat downstairs. And in winter, say, when it is cold, we turn it from 18 to 20 even, because, I cannot tolerate when it is too cold in the house. But in a few minutes, I go downstairs, and again I see that it was turned down. By whom? By my son. Even being in his bedroom, he can hear the sound of thermostat. You know that it is these buzzing sounds I cannot hear, he can. And it is very disturbing for him. Sounds outside the house, sounds, you know, downstairs, upstairs, whatever. We do not pay any attention to this. But for some children, for some adults with autism, it's impossible. They cannot tolerate them. So this is very important. If you see their reaction to something and you cannot hear or you cannot see, do not assume that there is nothing that can be disturbing. You have to know the sensory profile of each child you live with or work with. Then, of course, it is smell. Yes, especially for teachers, please don't wear any perfume. In my school, perfume was banned because for them it's not only sort of unpleasant uh, smells or whatever, it's like they can't breathe. Even if you think my perfume is very expensive, very good, no, for some they cannot tolerate it. And there are smells which we would never pay any attention, but they do. Those hyper smell sensitivities or tactile hypersensitivity. A paradox in this is some cannot tolerate light touch. They like hugs. They like this special weight, this vests and these weighted blankets, but they cannot tolerate light touch. Others cannot tolerate touch on certain parts of the body. You remember about fragmented perception, right? There are certain very sensitive parts of their bodies. So what I'm trying to say, you have to know hypersensitivities of all the children you work with, and they will be very, very different. The problem is that we can desensitize the child with tactile hypersensitivity, for example, massage, and there are special sensory diets and whatever. But there are certain stimuli you cannot desensitize the child with. That is why it is really very important to try to protect them from this stimuli. By the way, it is very personal for me. I cannot tolerate people whistling, so I run away, whether it is supermarket or whatever. I can't. My whole body reacts to this. So that's why I understand this population with hypersensitivities. Not to become aggressive, because sometimes it's impossible, especially if you are on public transport and somebody is very happy and starts whistling. I had to get off this bus or whatever it is. I can't tolerate it. That's why I understand hypersensitivities and this intolerance to certain stimuli in my son. His intolerances are very different from mine, but this is the point. Very, very individual. Then be aware of the colors and patterns of clothes. Some cannot tolerate certain patterns like polka dots or squares. That's why remember about them. And then remember that what we think is enjoyable, for example, fireworks, may be very overwhelming for them. Again, for many years, in November, all this Guy Fawkes night, Alyosha, my son, when he was a child, with our cat, were under his bed in his bedroom while we were outside, all this fire and whatever. Yes, it took years when he wanted to be with us. He was very motivated, but from inside the house already, but downstairs at least. Not everything we enjoy can be good for our children. And another thing, any unpredictable stimuli, any sudden stimuli can be very disturbing for some children. That is why, like with these fireworks and whatever, always warn the person about the stimuli coming. Or, for example, at school, this fire alarm and what training, and always prepare these children. Why? Because if it is sudden and unpredictable, it is much more painful. Yes, I am talking about physical pain, and it make exceptions for some children if you know they cannot tolerate unpredictable stimuli. Because if you tell them Friday 9:05, right, there will be fire alarm going. So it's okay. The child will be prepared, and that will be fine. Or, I will give you the example, which was like in one of the schools when I was present in the lesson. The teacher was brilliant, everything was good. And suddenly, one child sitting on the first row, became very agitated. And he was sort of even shaking. What happened? The teacher couldn't understand it. I could, because I was watching him from behind. You know what happened? There was a ruler on the teacher's desk. And while explaining something or looking for something, the teacher shifted the ruler a bit, and the ruler was half on the desk and half in the air. The teacher didn't notice. Yeah, it's just a ruler. But for the child, this moment, the lesson was over. Why? Because the ruler could fall down any minute, any second. And the child should be prepared for this event. That's why all his world was on this ruler. All this focus was on his ruler. And again, see, sometimes we don't notice this, but these children learn how to protect themselves from very, very young age. And so there are strategies to cope with light sensitivity. For example, turning off all any unnecessary lighting, especially fluorescent lighting, and using lamps rather than overhead lights and tinted lenses like this. And remember that the color of the lenses are very different for different children. See, fluorescent lights, I can't even tell you how painful it is. It's a personal experience, not only my son's experience. When he started wearing these tinted lenses, oh, I have to tell you this story. It was Donna Williams who told me about it. It was so many years ago when she lived in England. It was 1990 something. And Alyosha was only 6 or 7 and nearly nonverbal. He started talking after 7. And we were in her bungalow, sitting on the floor, on the carpet, talking. She was talking. I was listening first, and then we were discussing. And Alyosha was running around us with something in his hand. It was like trying to entertain himself. And she was watching him very, very closely. And I said, look, he is very hypersensitive. He cannot tolerate certain sounds. She said, Olga, his main problem is vision. He is very hypersensitive. I said, no, Donna, I know his hearing is so acute. He can hear what is going on downstairs and outside and whatever. She said, trust me. And I did. We went to the center, Erland Center at the time, and they diagnosed him. His color of his glasses is brown, and suddenly I could see the changes. He was wearing the. You see, I didn't even told him to wear this, to remind him to wear his glasses. He knew he needed them. He wouldn't leave the house without his glasses. For him, it was so, he felt more relaxed. And what is important, his hearing improved. It became less hypersensitive. Yes, it is very acute even now, but much, much less. Then I understood what was happening. All the senses are interconnected, right? So if one sense is affected, the other senses become affected as well. Why? Because as he couldn't tolerate certain sights and his vision was very, very hypersensitive, his hearing became his vision. He could he saw with his ears, he could, by the sound I put, say, a cup on the table, he knew what his mother was doing downstairs. He used his hearing not only to listen to, but also to see, if you like. And what I noted, and he wouldn't touch his food. He had to check it because he didn't trust his vision. When he started wearing his glasses, gosh, he stopped smelling his food. He could see it without any pain. Because when we say somebody, oh, don't smell people, for example, because some children do, especially young autistic children do, uh, it is not nice. Of course, it is not nice. But if it is the only reliable channel for this child, because other senses are uh, hypersensitive, and unreliable. So instead of addressing these other senses problems, we start sort of train child to behave. Right? No, this is absolutely wrong. And now he wears his glasses, still wears his glasses 30 years later after this meeting with Donna Williams. He doesn't need his glasses at home because it's quite dim, it's not bright, because I don't like bright lights, and we sort of adjusted our environment. But he will wear his glasses outside, always outside, and he in his day center, because he feels better. What is interesting, he needs his glasses when we go outside in winter, same in the evening. When it is dark, he needs even more this protection. Why? Because of these bright lights, lamppost, cars passing, and it is dark around. It's really difficult. Some people, yes, look at us and sort of wondered why this young man, 37-year-old man, wearing dark glasses. But when it is nighttime, yes, he needs them. Uh, so perhaps I talk too much, but about this problem because it is personal, and I met quite a few individuals suffering from the same problem like ours. This is what we can do to help them. Then, auditory hypersensitivity, as I said, right? This or something else, or don't take the child into overcrowded environment, too loud, where it is too loud and so on, without any protection. Tactile. Uh, this is possible, as I mentioned, that you can desensitize tactility. You can do this massage, sensory diets, and so on. So you can help in this way. My son and I, we use a weighted blanket. It helps. By the way, it's not only about hypersensitivity, these weighted things, and some children cannot tolerate the touch and cannot tolerate certain fabrics instead of and strip off anywhere if they cannot tolerate it, and instead of sort of desensitizing them, you can just change the fabric to one they can tolerate, because it is also a huge problem for some. And while talking about weighted blankets and these vests, it's not the topic of this video. We will talk about it someday, I hope, because it is very important. It's about feeling self, not this, or I am a person, I'm Olga, self, because some autistic people, this indicate that their self is half outside their bodies. It is not contained in the body. I have to mention again Donna Williams, as she calls this being half born, or partially born. But it's a very important topic. We will talk about it uh, later on. Then some are hyposensitive. What it means is not enough stimulation comes in through vision or hearing or again tactility. That is why we have to stimulate their senses. By the way, it's much more difficult to work with this hyposensitive people, to sort of wake up their senses, open their senses. It's providing, if it is hypovision, more bright things and, all these attractive things, flashing and whatever, or auditory sounds, all these different sounds, smells, and depending on the channel of each child, which is hyposensitive. So it is possible as well. It's much more difficult, but still it is possible to uh, stimulate the senses more. By the way, don't confuse hyposensitivity with temporary shutting down senses. Overload when they shut down all senses, right? But it is temporary because they just shut down all these channels that let any stimulation in when they are very overloaded. And there are other therapists, or occupational therapists. They can prescribe certain sensory diets and help you with this. And again, it's not as simple. Okay, you address hypersensitivities, you address hyposensitivities, and you think that, yeah, you've done it. No. You know, whatever autism is, I always say it, whatever autism is, it is never boring. Because one and the same child can be both hyper and hypo sensitive to the same visual or auditory stimuli because their perception fluctuates. At least you have to be detective, you have to know this child, and you have to notice these signs, because sometimes, yes, it is, say the child feels sick or high temperature or whatever. Sort of, there are several possible reasons, so be mindful about it. Besides, hypersensitivity can lead to two different experiences, to two different phenomena. Like disturbance by certain sensory stimuli, we discussed it right now, right? Hyper sensitivities, intolerance to certain stimuli, and fascination by certain sensory stimuli. This is a very interesting phenomenon. Perhaps you noticed, well, I notice it all the time in my son. Uh, some children can stare at something for not only minutes, for hours. Like, they're so fascinated. An insect, a flower, a pattern, can they can be absorbed by this pattern or flower, whatever, or by the sound. It is higher level fascination with this. It means they can appreciate stimuli much better than an ordinary person. We see, okay, flowers or smells or whatever, but they can be fascinated and losing themselves in certain stimuli. That's what how Donna explained it. That sometimes they lose their self in color, in sound, in smell, in tactile experience, and or resonating in resonance. Like you have the same frequency, if you like. You resonate with objects, with animals, with people, and you can feel something other people around you. Like I know several people, autistic people, who can resonate with people, and they can feel that no, I can't be in the company of this person. Or the opposite, they feel that this person is good, if you like, right? They don't think about it, oh, it's good, but they feel the energy. I'm sorry, I like this explanation with the energy, whether you believe it or not, but we all emit energy. And some energies sort of are good together, others not. And this is what quite a few autistic people describe. And Donna Williams, she felt people, and she even subcategorized them, subtyped them into edgy people, softy people, and whatever. Being not far from them, they could feel it. I think it is fascinating, and that's why, see, we say sometimes we feel emotions of certain people, and some can detect undetectable. Their senses are so hyper, and it's not necessarily always painful, but they can see the intensity of the energy in the room, and this they can see the way this energy goes around the room. Tito, he wrote quite a lot about it. And of course, it is distracting for them. It's not painful, but it is distracting. They can see these waves of energy going around, if you like. And sort of not everything is sort of bad about this intolerance and whatever hypersensitivity, because for some it is ability to appreciate nature, people, animals, what is going on. They do not interpret it the way we do, but they feel more connected with everything around them. Yes, I think we stop here for today. Thank you.